Hola clase. I want to introduce you all to verbs. There are some that are, of course, reflexive, and you need to learn the reflexive pronouns that go with verbs that want to be reflexive. And I'm also going to tell you about some other pronouns as well, because why not? Most times, most verbs are non-reflexive, right? Hablar means to speak. The subject in this sentence is I, because of the ending. I speak. The action of my speaking goes out away from me to somewhere else or to some other people. Same with llamar, which means to call. In this case, my call goes away over the telephone line to somewhere else. Once something is reflexive, the idea is that the action goes out from the person and actually comes back to the person. It's reflected back. That's why these are called reflexive verbs. When we communicate, we need to give you some kind of indication that the action is reflexive. So that means we need a reflexive pronoun. So if I don't want to say I talk to my mama, I call my mama, I talk to my kids, I want to say I talk to myself, we need a reflexive pronoun. Remember that in English, these are the reflexive pronouns. You may have forgotten them. So I is the subject. You're going to have to say I talk to myself, you talk to yourself, himself, herself, itself. Plurals, ourselves, themselves. We rarely use those. Just notice that all of these reflexive pronouns do have a say in them. So that might help you remember the reflexive pronouns in Spanish. Reflexive verbs with reflexive pronouns, and they could be reciprocal. I'll explain that. So the verb hablar, which meant to speak, you can make it reflexive by just putting a say on the end of it, okay? Here are the reflexive pronouns in Spanish. These are the equivalent of what we just saw in English. Myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, or the usted, like you're talking to yourself, but in a nice way. Usted se habla? Are you talking to yourself, sir? Here's we talk to, okay, this is what I want to explain here. In the plurals, you could have a reciprocal thing here. So this means we talk to ourselves, but actually it could also mean we talk to each other, okay? And down here, this means they talk to themselves, but you could interpret it as meaning they talk to one another. That's called reciprocal. It's not quite the same thing as reflexive. It's kind of like when two people are hugging each other. In English, we say they are hugging each other. So it's not reflexive because that would be like I hug myself. But when it's reciprocal, each person is doing it for the other person. Okay, just so you're aware that in Spanish, this is how they would communicate reflexive. And of course, it's always plural because it takes two to tango, as they say. Okay, non-reflexive verbs. Llamar, to call, non-reflexive because you call somebody else. Llamarse, however, is reflexive. You call yourself. That's how they say it. Of course, my name is Chris. I call myself Chris. Is this reflexive or non-reflexive? Turns out that most of the hygiene things that you do for yourself in the bathroom and stuff like that, that's always going to be reflexive in Spanish. So that's how it's going to look. Let's look at some more. If you needed to express an idea like, I need to get up early tomorrow, by the way, getting up in the morning is a reflexive action. You have to get yourself up in Spanish. And you combine this with the conjugated form of necesitar, so necesito. Look at where you could put the me. You could put it on the infinitive, just like you were doing with the se. Or you could put the me way up front, in front of the necesito. Now, we were looking at present progressive tenses. How would you say when your friend calls you on the phone, you're trying to say, I'm washing my face right now, I can't talk. The action is in progress. But the action is also reflexive. Okay, washing, lavarse. So you would need to say, because remember, normally to say I'm washing is me lavo. But this is an action in progress, so you're going to have to use the verb estar in the middle. I am, estoy lavando me la cara. You could put the me at the end of this participle, or you could put it way up here in front of the estoy. And now, I just can't help it. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys something very interesting. Did you notice that these pronoun lists in front of you look a lot like the reflexive pronouns I showed you a minute ago? You know, me, te, se, nos, se, me, te, se, nos, se. I want y'all to know that this group is called the direct object pronouns, and this group is called the indirect object pronouns. And I want to show you how these work. If you stick a verb in here like to want, querer, which also means to love, if I wrote this here like this, who's loving here, or who wants? I does, right? So this means, me quiero means I love myself. Okay? Te quieres means you love yourself. But la quiere and lo quiere does not mean he loves himself. If I wanted to say he loves himself, that would have to be se quiere. Therefore, these are not reflexive verbs here, even though they look like them. To use these pronouns, direct object pronouns, properly, just mix things up, y'all. What happens if you take the te here and move it up in front of the quiero? Okay, so let's conjugate, or let's translate. I love is quiero. I love you. So let's try this. Te quiero. Te quiero means you I love, or I love you. Again, the concept here is if we stayed on the same line, it would sound reflexive. The person doing the action is receiving the action. But when you mix the lines up, you get a subject that's different from your direct object, okay? So let's try another one. What happens if you start here, but then you take this one and put it down here? So this would be me quieres. Well, again, the subject is at the end of the verb. This means you want or you love me. Do you love me? Me quieres? Lo means him. It's masculine. How about I love him? Lo quiero. How about I love her? That's the feminine. La quiero. We love each other. Nos queremos. That's a reciprocal. Isn't that nice? Okay. How about you love them? Well, them is over here. Choose it, male or female. So let's say you love is here. So that would be los. Los goes in front here. Los quieres. By the way, these down here are called indirect object pronouns, and I'll explain them another day, but they're kind of similar. And to end my presentation, I'll say nos vemos, which means see you later, or we are seeing each other sometime. Or also people like to say te veo, which means I see you, which demonstrates exactly what I was teaching you. Hasta luego, clase.